Alyssa. I'm Dr. Barbara Becker Holstein, and I have the pleasure of your company. It looks like fun, like you're in a tent or something. I don't know, but
It's a
hello.
house.
Are you in a special environment already? You know?
This is my house. It's
Uh,
special. I built it myself.
oh my God, that's great. That's terrific.
Thanks.
I want you to quickly introduce yourself because you know yourself so much better than I know you. And then I'm going to rush in and ask some questions and we'll chat.
Okay, I'm Elisha Daeva. Um, I'm a multidisciplinary thinker who's written two books. I'm about to submit my next book to the publisher. I'm fascinated with the intersection of ancient cultures, archaeology, linguistics, and genetics, and spirituality. So I've spent my life studying those topics and writing about them and attempting to bring them together in ways that are really accessible to the average person.
Well, from what I can see, you've done that many times over, it seems like. Um, I'm wondering about your most recent book I think is tying the world around the concept that women had a better place in life, maybe in ancient days than now.
Yes, it's called Before War on Marriage, Hierarchy, and Our Matriarchal Origins. So, are you familiar with Riane Eisler's book from the 90s, called The Chalice and the Blade?
No, I am not. So,
So that's
yeah.
what started it all. And it was a bestseller in the 90s. And she really was groundbreaking in bringing together all the pieces of this ancient scholarship based on the work of Maria Gimbutas, who was an archaeologist and anthropologist who, after 50 years of doing archaeological digs, had discovered that especially in the Neolithic period from like 9,000 BC until 3,500 BC, women were at the center of civilization. There's no evidence for male dominance or for war or endemic systemic violence, or for status hierarchies like the haves and have-nots. What all of that, either it started in 3,500 BC started spreading around the world. Maybe there have been other cycles of it, but there have been thousands of years without that, which is shocking to most people who believe that it's always been that way, that it's inevitable, it's human nature, we're by our nature hopelessly violent and oppressive, and that men are just inherently better, and because they're stronger, then they've always been in charge, and women have really not done much of anything other than raise kids and feed people, which is all good stuff to do as well.
Tell me, do you do you or these other explorers have any sense of how they did stay alive, even say medically long enough to reproduce? And, how did they have enough wisdom as well as machinery and everything else related that they could have this quieter, more normalized culture?
I think that it was really just the norm. It's the norm for our species. Really, what patriarchy or dominator culture is a trauma response. So it seemed to have begun when there was an extended period of drought, where basically there was extreme climate change, like from North Africa into Middle East, turned into desert in a very short period of time. That whole area had been lush. But before it was just normal, like there it was, and we had all of the arts of civilization at that time, ceramics, weaving, um, building solid houses, even large populations up to like 50,000 people in some parts of southeastern Europe. So I think back then it was more the question of how can they live with war and, constant genocide and oppression.
Mhm. That is so, so fascinating. I have spent most of my adult life as a psychologist
Mm,
helping women find a way to a path where they can achieve their purpose and find
mm.
happiness in the present. And no, I haven't studied some of these things you're bringing up, but I have been privy to how much damage can
Mm.
happen in the most ordinary of marriages in this, in the world we live in,
Yes.
just because there's just so much where it's accepted and believed that you're only going to do so much with your life. Even my mother, when she graduated high school, my uncle, who was head of the family, said, well, you have two choices, Bernice. I'll either pay for you to go to secretarial school for 6 months, or you can go to one of the department stores and work as a clerk.
Yeah, things have changed a
So,
lot in a
yeah.
short time, which is, which is amazing. It's actually amazing. And that's why my purpose in life has been to get this information out there because it's been covered up. It's been systematically covered up because that's how institutions perpetuate themselves, is by suppressing information that doesn't fit. And so women's accomplishments never get reported. So women don't have any way of knowing that they've done everything that men
Mhm.
have done.
I'm so glad you're doing your work. Um, can you tell us an interesting story or something that has stuck in your mind?
Well, and a lot of my work is summaries of other people's work, which I've kind of followed up since that book came out in the 90s. I followed up with a lot of the genetic information, which is fascinating, that has really validated a lot of this, which is basically that in 3500 BC, the people known as the Indo-Europeans, who are most of our ancestors, basically started colonizing Europe. They came from the Russian steppes, and they basically replaced the entire indigenous Eurasian male genome with their DNA. So either they prevented all the males from passing on their genes or they killed them all. But either way, we now have a much smaller male lineage that's limited to only one lineage, the Indo-Europeans, whereas the women have a very, very diverse lineage because they didn't kill the women. So this was the most transformational event that has basically ever happened. The geneticist David Reich, who's kind of the most famous geneticist, says that, yeah, this is a foundational event, and that's what sort of European culture is based on, is the incoming nomads, basically primitive horse nomads, appropriated the civilization of the female-centric, goddess-worshiping people who'd been there before. And that's where all of us come from.
So were they willing to go into battle to get rid of a group of people? Is that more or less what you're saying? That
Well, I don't think there would have been even the concept of battle because the peaceful goddess worshiping people that had invented civilization didn't even have a concept of war. So I'm actually working on a fictional version that comes from my own imagination of this, of what it would be like if you've never imagined war or warriors, and then you see these or seen men on horseback and you see these men on horseback coming over the hill, like what would you think? They couldn't have even mounted a defense because they had no concept of it. But after that first contact, the word would have spread. So I'm imagining how that happened. People fled for the hills. So people just kept migrating west to escape or up into the mountains where the original genetics survived and culture survived for a longer time. And then they learned to fight. So the next thousands of years were a slow transitional phase, and then they're spraying up these sort of matriarchal warrior goddess queen societies, who eventually would be the ones to bring down the Bronze Age empires in this like massive battle of the sexes. These warrior queens who basically taught themselves to fight and um, and mount a defense, but it was sort of for nothing in the end. But they managed to keep their way of life for a few thousand more years, sort of in the fringes, like
This,
in the Aegean Islands.
what's your hunch about what the medical care was like and how long they lived? As
There's this idea, most people think that everybody in the ancient past, only lived to be like 29 or something.
Mhm.
But I think that's an erroneous belief that is based on averages because there was a lot of infant mortality. So if you factor that in, you get a much shorter average lifespan. But we definitely have skeletons of people who were in their 60s. Um, so I think that's all a myth that's
Mhm,
designed to make people
mhm.
think that we were more primitive than we were.
And what about the medicines? Things
So
like that.
they were herbalists. They were master herbalists, and they would have had knowledge of birth control. And they actually had some form of surgery. Like 3/4 of the skulls we find from that period have a hole that's been drilled in their skulls, which is something people have done up until the current day. And they must have had some knowledge of how to prevent infection with that. But unfortunately, they had a lot of suffering due to arthritis, because this was sort of the advent of agriculture, and eating grains is really not healthy for us. So they would have had a lot of health problems in that regard.
And did they lose a lot of babies the way, I mean, my great grandmother lost two babies before the next nine lived, you know.
Yeah, the infant mortality has really been a problem, but I believe that there's some evidence to show that they weren't afraid of death. They saw it as a joyous occasion because you were going back to the womb of the Earth Mother. So perhaps it wasn't a great tragedy, to lose a baby. We can only speculate.
Maybe, I don't know. That's so interesting. Wow, it's heavy duty understanding what you present, particularly because in my case, I don't have the historical training behind it to immediately recognize, oh yeah, I remember reading that, or I saw that when I was studying X course. I don't have the background. My background is all around how women function in today's world and how they don't. So, have you given some courses or do you do some things that help, I think particularly women become more interested in this stuff?
I don't I've thought about giving some courses. I'm not very good at organizing
Mhm.
groups, getting stuff together and promoting things. Um, I've gotten a lot of feedback from women who have read the book who've said that it changed their lives because it just gave
Wow.
them a different perspective on what was possible. Because women, with this idea that we've never really done anything important, that I mean, I think it actually causes depression and
Oh, it
hopelessness.
does. Yes.
I
Yeah.
actually started life in neuroscience, and that was sort of my first career. But I dropped out of academia because I didn't like it. But
What kind of home? This is a question that's just floated into my head. It's not on my list, but now I'm curious. Like, what were your parents like? What kind of world did you grow up in as a girl and a teen?
my dad is very intellectual, and he really encouraged that in me. So by the age of 2, he was teaching me to read using fridge magnets, like those little fridge
Yeah,
letters and
yeah.
stuff. And that really predisposed me to be hyperlexic, like a voracious reader. So I was reading by three, and
Wow.
I really learned about the world through books because I didn't really relate to my fellow children that much. Um, and I didn't really relate to the world in general. I was kind of an observer. And in high school, I ended up this really the most popular girl in the school kind of took me under her wing because she thought it was cool that I was smart. So she kind of took me into the real world. But I was really raised by books, and I was just observing the world around me, and I didn't understand why, like after our holiday dinners in the family, why my brother was expected to like talk about politics with the adult men while I was expected to, clean up the dishes because I was more interested in politics than my brother. So there's all these little things that I just didn't understand until I
Oh,
finally read The Chalice and the Blade, and it put it all together. Like, why was there war, and why were some people rich and some people poor, and why are the boys so mean and condescending to the
hmm
girls?
hmm. That's quite a background. Are either of your parents still alive?
They're both still
Oh,
alive.
that's
Yeah.
great. I mean, I don't know if it's great, but
It is. I
yeah.
I hope they continue on. I mean,
Uh,
they did their best.
have they been interested in the work that you've done? Uh,
Sort of. My mom has become a Christian, and it's not really compatible with Christianity because it's all about the religion of the goddess. I mean, I think they're both proud of me. Like I got the best review of my entire life recently, and I sent it to my dad, and he said that
oh,
must be so satisfying. So he gets it.
oh, that's great. Where did that review come from?
Have you heard of
Yeah,
Goodreads.com?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was on Goodreads.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. That's great. It's
Thanks.
great to get a
It's
great review. Yes. Yeah. I just finished a book, which I
oh,
consider my best.
oh.
Um, and this one is about two girls in 1960 who go off to college, and it's all the things, the people, the things, the mysteries, the mistakes, the challenges that they face. And I hope to get a lot of discussion out of it along the lines that if I were teaching, I would teach. But I seem to particularly enjoy putting this stuff into romantic type novels.
Oh.
Because the thing is that girls around late 20s, I mean, well, I really mean 20-ish on, are very normal with hormones just like men. And it's not
Hmm.
like they live flat lives, whether they're dating or married or not. They're women and they have adventures and they have mishaps and they have distortions and disappointments. And all of this stuff can really be mixed together with helping someone. I think it's really just like you are, helping someone say, I don't have to be stuck this way. I don't have to not become a dentist just because it seems stupid to my cousin. You know, this is crazy. So I've enjoyed working that route and these two women have become very, very alive to me.
Oh,
And when I'm writing, often, well, this happens to a lot of authors. I'm writing and I'm feeling like they're telling me what to say.
wow.
It's very powerful. And who knows what that is all about? And we don't really know everything about the human mind and where it's picking up information.
Oh yeah, I'm actually my next nonfiction book will be about telepathy. Um, I
Oh,
actually I believe that the mind is actually a more of an antenna
mm-hmm,
that it's
mm-hmm.
picking stuff up, and so yeah, I think that the materialist paradigm of science is really on the wrong track.
Yeah, but there's more people I've read, and this is a very low level reading when you're reading off your phone articles, but there's a lot of stuff now where people are very curious about the energy forms that we don't understand, and how what hovers around us that then can be included as, we think it's just our brain thinking, but it's much more complicated. And I think that that probably will be stuff you'll get to in your book. Um,
Yeah, it's all I think we know very little actually. And that I hope that we're really on the verge of a paradigm shift to understanding that we are all connected and that there's a lot more mystery than we give credit for now.
yeah, I think there is. What else do you want to tell the public in case someone has never found you, finds you through this podcast?
Well, let's see. So the fictional book about all this will be called Before God,
Mm,
and that's the thing I'm the most nervous about because writing nonfiction is easy, but that's why um when you were saying that about the the words coming to you from these characters, like I'm hoping that will happen. I've written a lot of sections of it and sometimes in a sort of a trance, because like the idea of trying to bring forth this world, this ancient world, is it's so precious to me. It's so foreign to us. Like their world would have been completely mystical, like they would have been in a completely different mindset. So I have written some snippets of it, and I think it's such a deep work to try to put ourselves in the mindset of ancient people, and then to imagine what it would be like if all of a sudden all the men you knew were killed and you were taken captive by these beast men that you had never imagined. You'd never imagined, being having sex against your will and how you would approach that, and how you would try to escape or what you would do and that whole process. And I feel like, did you happen to see the movie Avatar, the Avatar film?
I don't think so, because the word's coming to me faster than the memory of the film, so I'm going to say
The new
probably.
one just came out, the third one in the trilogy. So it's really about all of this, the first colonization. Um, and so I feel like it's in the zeitgeist right now. So the nonfiction book that I'm just finishing now, it's due to the publisher in 2 weeks, and I'm excited because it's my first traditionally published book, and this is actually about the real peopling of the Americas. So this is another big lie. I mean, the more research I do, the more I find out that almost everything that we believe
We've been
is
lied
a
to.
lie. We've been lied to, either lied to or just there's mistakes that just get
Mhm.
repeated over and over because of academic egos and just inertia. But the idea that Columbus was the first person to discover America is ridiculous. It's
Mhm.
actually an absurd theory. Are you aware of that?
Well, I know there were indigenous people here forever. I don't know how long, and I'm
Right.
sure there
Well,
were other boats that had stopped before. I
exactly.
can't
Like they
name them, but I'd say yes, there were.
Yes, and the reason why I'm writing this book now is as a follow-up to Before War, because the main thing that people always say to me is, well, if dominator culture and war and oppression isn't inevitable and natural, why was it already in the Americas when the Europeans came? And this is my answer to that. It came from abroad. It didn't just kind of naturally arise. It came through contact, and everyone was here. Egyptians, Phoenicians, Minoans, Greeks, Chinese, Japanese, Arabs, Africans. They all were sailing here. And the amount of vicious suppression of this reality is just beyond what people can conceive of. You know, the way that academia protects its dogmas,
Mm.
and nothing more than this one. And I had to I mean, I wanted this to be a very academic, very sober book, but in the end, you really can't avoid talking about giants because they were all over the place in America. Well, I never wanted to go there with the giants, but it's impossible to avoid. So they built these gigantic mounds that are everywhere in America.
So when you say giants, you mean a species of humans that were very large?
Yes, from 7 feet to most of them were around 7.5 feet, but some in the range of 10 to 12 feet.
And did they eventually get killed or die out or?
Yes. I mean, this is what's so insane is that there were some that were still around in the 19th century. Um, but they were failing. There was a real change in the atmosphere around that time that made it too difficult for them to survive. But for the most part, they were killed off because they were cannibals. I mean, this just sounds so insane. Like I
Mhm.
never thought I would even talk about this because I wanted, but I think this is why they don't want you to go digging in the past of ancient America because it's just so weird. Um, but it explains how they could have built these enormous mounds, in short periods of time. But the peopling of the Americas, it's just such a diverse, amazing story, and
Well,
it
you're
just
going to tell a lot more of it, I can tell. But also, like Egypt has stuff that's unexplainable. And I think in Israel, there's some stuff underground that's pretty unexplainable of how they got it there.
That's it. I mean, so this book is going to be called Coming to America of Megaliths, Mounds, and Migrations. So it's all about the megaliths. So those things that you're talking about that aren't easy to be explained, they're called megalithic sites, and they have stone blocks that are like tons and tons that couldn't even be moved with our modern cranes. I mean, people have tried to reproduce how they would have moved these stones, these granite blocks, single blocks of granite, with perfect precision, like as if they were laser cut to you can't even, the blocks are fitted together such that you can't even fit a human hair between them. And
Wow.
so we're told that, we know how all this was done. We don't have the first idea, really.
And it's a shame because it doesn't hurt us who are alive now to give credit where credit is due. It doesn't change our problems or solutions, or, well, it might change some of our solutions and being more loving people and stuff.
Four
It can
minutes.
also,
We're going to be cut off. So,
okay,
could you're still there now?
yes.
Okay, so quickly tell people how they can reach you if you have a website or you just want to name a book again or whatever. It's all yours.
Okay, and I just want to finish what I was just saying. As far as megalithic technology, it is important because whatever technology they had could change the world now in terms of free energy. So there's
Ah,
that. So
right.
my website is beforewar.com. That's my book, Before War. And I'll be putting updates on there, and you can get to my Substack where I have some more recent writings
Okay.
about more kind of current feminist topics because I mean I feel like Before War is more important now than ever before because there's been a massive backlash against feminism. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
It's called the manosphere or the red pill movement, which is all about trying to force women back into the kitchen, and it's working. There's a lot of women who are championing this idea that women should stop competing with men and,
Yeah. Yeah.
submit. So it's really terrifying what's happening now.
Wow. Well, I'm not in the kitchen and I hate cooking now that I'm older, so
Me too. I never
safe.
really liked it.
This
I'm
was
trying to
great.
get better.
I'd love to meet you sometime if you're ever
Likewise.
around the New York area.
Oh,
So,
I've been wanting to make a trip to New York. It's been decades.
all right. So hopefully we'll talk further. And thank you for
Okay.
coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to hear
Okay.
from you.
Good
Bye.
night. Bye bye.